All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Aware Athlete Show. I'm your host, Scott Forrester, and today's guest is Lauren Abrams. And Lauren is an attorney in Southern California, and she advocates for workers' rights. But her story today is going to be one of rags to riches, and even more importantly, of overcoming the dark night of the soul. So, Lauren, thank you for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much, Scott. I love the name, the Aware Athlete. That's
Oh,
just
thank you,
that in itself. I love that. Thank you for
thank you,
asking me.
thank you. And if I'm not going to go into it, but I mean athlete in the broadest sense of someone who's seeking for a meaningful life. So,
Yes.
yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So, let's dive right into your story. Rags to riches. Where did you start out, and what is your journey that brought you to this point?
Yeah, I'm somebody that it's an interesting, I guess, to me. Everybody's story is a little bit interesting, and I don't look like my story, so to speak. I'm somebody that I grew up in a typical middle class neighborhood on the East Coast, and
Hmm.
but I always had this feeling like I didn't fit in, I didn't belong. But I was always very outgoing, had lots of little kids that I was friends with, but I never felt like I could tell anybody what was going on. And I don't think we talked, well, we didn't in my family talk about what was going on. And you just act like everything's fine. And there wasn't anything so awful, but I just had this feeling like something was wrong with me, or I was flawed, or I wasn't given some toolkit. I don't know. I just never felt like I fit in this life or the universe or anything. And so once I discovered in the experimentation of junior high and high school of drinking and drugs and everything, I was off and running and never looked back. I love not feeling and not just, that was me. And by the time I was 19, I'd been arrested. I was down to 80 some pounds. I just was a shell of a human being. I lived all over the country, and I ended up in my early 20s living in an abandoned house in North Hollywood, California. I slept on a dirt floor. I really had nothing. And that wasn't my bottom. I mean, we are survivors. And a few years later, I was clearly a mess. I ended up in a rehab, and I had no idea there was anybody else like me that had been through anything like that, because I kept trying to act like I had it together. I'm not from that kind. Like, I'm not from that kind of family. Everyone in my family went to college and kind of moved along, and I hadn't spoken to my family in a long time. And anyway, and once I went through rehab and I got hope, and found out there was a way out, and had no idea. I tried to kill myself. I had no idea there was a way out of
Hmm.
the situation I'd been in. And once I had gone through and found a way out and slowly putting my life together, going to work every day and just slowly getting a life. After a few years of that, I started going to college and working full time and putting myself through school. And I was able to transfer to UCLA on a scholarship and graduating from there, and then going on to USC Law School.
Wow.
And yeah, and I also got a master's at night because I went to the law school because I got in. It's a good law school. And I just, so anyway, I always wanted my master's and was going to get my doctorate. I got married during that time, and so I ended up starting a practice and having a thriving practice. I've had it for, oh my gosh, probably a quarter of a century now. It's been a long time, and I get to be of service and help others, and and help employees who are wrongfully terminated and discriminated against at work. And I feel like I help people all the time, and I'm always looking out for others. And throughout this entire time, I help others who had been like I was. I didn't know there was a way out, so I just figure other people might not either. So I've always, during this entire time, it's been more than half my life now, help others get out of that. So that's the
Well,
rags to riches portion of it.
yeah, yeah. Boy, that's a lot.
Yeah.
so, so that came from your whole childhood. You didn't feel like you fit in. Um, I there's just something inside of us that drives us through these experiences. I think, and so in that you felt like you didn't fit in, and then you turned to the kind of the party scene and the drug. Did you take drugs by yourself or with others?
Uh, it didn't matter. I mean, initially I
Didn't.
was introduced to him from a high school boyfriend,
I see. Yeah.
and then I was off and running. So.
So what does you felt like you didn't fit in, so and now you're out here helping people. So what part has connection played in your life? Was
You know,
that
connection is everything. And so once you're completely clean, I mean, I live a very clean lifestyle. I don't care what anyone else does. I'm not judgy that way. I mean, my kids are home from college now, and you know, you attract what you are anyway. So when you're healthy, you tend to attract healthy people. It didn't matter where I moved in this country. People would come up to me and go, "Hey, you want to party?" Well, people don't do that. And I attract a very high vibrating, really cool group of people well, we're not out like we used to be right now, out and about, but COVID will pass and then we will be again. And like, I get to meet someone like you, and I've looked, you know, up and who your listeners and who you attract. Like we get to, and when I don't feel comfortable in my skin today, I have so many tools in my toolbox, and I get to say, I'm feeling really off. I might not have a word for it because I didn't grow up with that kind of verbiage, but there's so many things I can do. I don't run from my feelings today. I get to feel
yeah,
them. They pass. Who knew?
yeah,
You know, like I can go right into my feelings, feel where they are in my body, and feel them and let them go instead of having some trauma effect that I've learned so much just from interviewing people on my podcast, just like you. I'm sure you would.
yes,
Like,
yeah.
it's amazing to me.
Yeah, I just started doing this because I did want to put something good out into the world, and I didn't have a lot of thought process behind it. It's just something that kind of came out of me that I wanted to do. And yeah, I think all the people, I learn a lot from other people, just like you said. And I think not only myself, but when you put these stories out into the world, they can be life changing. Just listening to people's journeys and where they've come.
And
So
it's also how we connect. We connect through stories.
mhm,
It's through when
yeah,
we hear each other's stories, it humanizes us and it just brings us together. I talked to my podcast came about. It started as me just on a soul search. I went through a dark time in my practice. I was divorced when my kids were really young, and I my practice is thriving, and I just posted about this on LinkedIn in a more general way, but and everything looks good on the outside, but my receivables weren't coming in, and I had to pay my employees, I had to pay everybody, and I was having real financial difficulties, and I had nowhere to turn, and I had no one to talk to. They don't teach you in law school, by the way, about running about money. And this was my discussion on LinkedIn. I guess doctors don't learn this either. Like, but it wasn't even that. I didn't have money coming in. It would be eventually, and I didn't have money. I got to where I didn't know how I was going to feed my kids. It got that dark, and I didn't have anyone to talk to, and I didn't know where to turn. And I went to this spin class that I was going to back then, and when you could do that, and it's in the dark, and this woman, Angela Manuel Davis, who's super, super motivating, and she's opened her own studio, and Oprah took her on the road. She's just an incredible motivator. And I'm in the back of this class, and it's pitch black, and she's got the music's blasting, and I'm crying and crying. I didn't pay for it. I had some classes left in my QUE. I never know how to pronounce that word.
yeah,
And I'm crying, and I'm just working out, and she's doing her Angela thing where she says, "I don't know who I'm talking to right now, but I know somebody needs to hear this," and she's doing her whole thing, and I don't know, something in me in that class shifted, and I knew I'd be okay. I don't know what she says exactly. I wrote her a very long email thanking her, and I got through another day. You know, it just, and that's what
yeah,
it is. There's always like you get through one more day, and no, money did not rain on me, but everyone got fed. The thing I
yeah.
was going through, well, like I got through it, but I will say it was particularly dark. And when I got through that one, because I'm always grateful, like, oh my God, look at my life. I can't believe I have this life I have. Always grateful. And that one kind of did a little number on me, and I was like, what the hell was that one when I got through?
Yeah.
And I decided, like, why are we here? This was my soul search now. Like, I
Mm.
don't understand. So we'll get through it, and then we love each other, and then you go through another one, and then you do and what, and then you die. Like, I don't understand. Why are we here? And I decided I was going to ask a person a week, a much older demographic, that question. Like, okay, they say nobody on their deathbed ever wish they worked
Wow.
harder or lived longer. So what have you've lived a lot longer than me. What have you gleaned from life? Tell me why we're here. And I would ask one person a week just for
Mhm.
me. And I started doing it. I'm not a DIYer. I don't have a lot of time or projects I do. So this was for me only. And I would go and I would interview a person a week just for me, and people would divulge the most personal information. It was unbelievable. It was just so rich and deep and good. And after a while, I'd go home and I'd write it up and in my own verbiage, not making fun of anybody, just it would have a bit of humor, the way I would write it up of what I gathered from what I was told. And anyway, after a while, there were common themes, and I was like, "This is so good. I'll write one of those books." And one of those books where you open it up and you're like, that's just what I needed to hear. Or you close it and open it again and go, no, that's what I needed to hear. And so I started doing that. It was going to be called 52 Weeks of Hope, but then COVID hit and I did a pivot and I started podcasting. So now I get to interview all these amazing people, and I'm writing the book still. I've gone back to doing
Yeah.
it.
So yeah, a lot of interesting things there. You went through a very dark time before you began your journey into law school, and here you are working full time and going to UCLA, and that's really not very easy. Were you taking a full course load, or did how
Oh,
long
yeah,
did?
of course. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
of course. Yeah, you're a go getter. Um, and then you get into USC Law School, very famous, and and how your student loans must have accumulated.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So that made it a little bit extra burden on trying to open the law practice. But what I find here's another thing that I find interesting is that you had cleaned yourself up, so you had already. Let's talk about that. You got help. What kind of help did you get? Who helped you? What did they help you with? What tools did you get out of that first experience?
Oh, I got hope. I think when you're that hopeless, like completely hopeless,
Yeah,
that you just, I can remember wishing I could go to sleep and never wake up.
yeah,
Um, and I met others like me, and one person, he's like, I wanted to hang myself. This guy is so successful today. When you talk to some of these people who have been around as long as me, and I was like, oh, that would be like messy. I just wanted to go to sleep and not wake up. Like we would laugh. I mean, to actually talk out loud about things that were so dark and that had been inside me for so long, I didn't know there was a way out. I had to receive that kind of hope, to go from such a low despair to, oh my gosh, here are people that have been here and are now like happy and pretty. They're not scary and dark.
yeah,
And to get that kind of hope, there's nothing like that.
yeah. So you've mentioned, I can see this in your story a little bit. I think you've mentioned imposter syndrome,
Oh
and
yeah.
then of course you thought you were going through a very dark time, which you were. But at that time, you didn't realize maybe that that's kind of a universal thing. I mean, everybody goes, they don't
I
have
did not.
exactly the same.
I I didn't know that until maybe this last year. I really there was so much shame in me from that. I can't even begin to tell you. I still get a little like, oh, I was on that audio app Clubhouse, and I heard the head of a large company. She talked. I felt like I was listening to my story. She openly talked about being in the exact same place, feeding all her employees, and almost going under. And I was like, I was having, I don't know if this is officially PTSD, but I felt like I was hearing my own story. And I'm, it was just unbelievable to me because things, you look good on the outside. My practice is in Beverly Hills, which, yes, so what? Century City is more expensive, but if you don't know that, like, I have a good address, I have a nice this and that. And it's not about that, the accoutrements and the outsides. It's about how am I taking care of the insides? How am I helping others? And being of service. It really is. That was the message I got everywhere. Love and service and community, that we don't do this life thing alone, that you need others. We can't sit around isolating. People that are lonely, their solution to that is to isolate. Like it's the reverse of what we need.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. Imposter syndrome would actually keep you away from people a little bit, because you think you're just not worthy and so on.
yeah. It
But
also keeps
really,
you
what you need is
from
just to go
going
right.
after. Yeah, it'll
Yeah.
keep you from going after what you really want to do. Like so many people have this spark inside them of what they really want to do. Or with you as an athlete, I'm sure you know it too. Like, oh, I'm not really I used to say like this Angela. She's like, you are an athlete, and in my head, I'm like, nah. But I can't say that because I'm in her class. Like, nah. But like I'm my own athlete. Like I had to do the twist. Like, okay, maybe I didn't grow up as an athlete or whatever, but I can do stuff. You know,
Yeah.
maybe I didn't
Absolutely.
run track, but actually I'm fit. And it's the mindset. Or starting a podcast, like, what are people going to think of me? Who cares?
Yeah.
It's an advantage of getting older, though. I really don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
or I can remember walking down a courthouse in the corridor thinking, oh my God, all these people think I'm a lawyer. I had been practicing 10 years at the time and was in the middle of trial. I am a lawyer. I went to a good law school, but like that's imposter syndrome, your head telling you, what are they? But Michelle Obama has it. I mean, the number of people, Sheryl Sandberg talks about it in her book, Meryl Streep, Maya Angelou, before she passed, she used to talk about, now I'm really going to get found out. You're in very good company if you have imposter syndrome. I did a lot of research on this, wrote a whole blog and an article. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So you know what you are if you have imposter syndrome?
What?
You're a human being.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Really. And so you have to approach life with a certain amount of graciousness and, and strong humility.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
I was given such a good definition of humility. Humility is not thinking less of myself, it's thinking of myself less.
Yeah. Yeah. That is good. So you had a couple of really dark times. You had the dark time, when you needed drug rehab and so on. But then later, you had this big challenge with not making enough money, and you've got to feed your family and all that kind of pressure. And so that is also, of course, a universal thing. But uh, that led you to a little bit different question. Not how can I clean up, but what's the meaning of life? And you've already told us. Yeah. What is it? It's
Yeah,
connecting and serving and yeah.
absolutely.
And life is full of questions, but that answers most of them.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
In the blue zones where people live the longest, they have community. And they live the longest and they're the happiest. I think that's the big part too.
So 52 weeks of hope. When did you start that? Was that over a year ago?
Yeah, it's over a year. It's maybe a year ago, October. I'm not even positive. But what I did after my 52nd episode, because I ask everybody people, my guests, they're leaders and change agents and healers, that type. And I ask everybody, what's the hardest challenge you overcame? How'd you do it? And what's your message of hope? But at the end, I always say, do you have a message of hope you want to give? So after my 52nd episode, I took all the messages of hope and I compiled them into 10 overarching messages. And
Uh-huh.
then I did an episode that I actually called The Meaning of Life. I was like, okay, I've got it now.
Oh,
It's
very
really
cool.
short. I have a short episode called The Meaning of Life. It's like 18 minutes, something like that. And there's 10 overarching messages. That's going to be actually my book because then I'll use examples from the people I interviewed that I think really encapsulate like that message because we are resilient. We can get through anything. I've interviewed people that have been through, oh my gosh, really horrific. And then like everyone, nobody escapes life without going through things, but the things, I guess, the loss of a child, but yet finds joy in life.
Yeah.
And she just lost her child within the last year. Like this is her first Christmas, and she's a producer of one of those Bravo shows that everyone watches, but me. Oops. On but and so she's got a sense of humor. She's as she says she's a great storyteller. So it's not depressing, and but that shows resilience.
Yeah. So when will your book be coming out?
I have to finish writing it instead of me saying, and this is another thing, like I'm turning the verbiage around instead of saying, why aren't I writing this book? Because I'm also in trial prep, unfortunately. Um, I'm saying, how do people who write books find the time to do that? Because I wrote the first few chapters and it'll basically write itself, but I have to have the time for my family.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, could I'm going to go ahead. I can edit this. Could I pause for a second?
Yeah,
To make
yeah,
my
of course.
thoughts
Go
be
ahead, pause it.
quiet?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm
I
sorry.
usually hit mute when those happen. I just go to mute.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to cut this part out and go take care of it. Okay. So sorry. My wife is not home. She's at the grocery store, and so
I are you kidding me? As soon as like we have a house line, when it rings, both the dogs start barking. I've gotten now where if I'm recording, I just hit mute. I just automatically went as soon as I hear the house line. I know the dog's gonna start barking. I just hit mute, so it's like less edit
yeah,
for the editors. I
yeah,
get it. Yeah,
yeah. I'm going to try to take that part out.
yeah. I
So,
think I get it. It's been
okay.
going the whole time. So
Okay. So can you now tell us? It seems so much like you right now. I know you don't want to get too much into the law, but uh, as you, what led you to actually pick law? Because you can study so many things in college, and then what led you to pick your particular focus of your practice?
well, I think things pick you. I don't think I ever picked law. I went to law school because I got in, and it's just like at UCLA. I I was looking for I wanted to be a communications major because I liked everything listed under it. And then I found out the communications major at UCLA only takes 100 people a year. And of that 100, only 25 from outside of UCLA. And when I was looking for another major, a friend of mine said to me, hey, they take 25 people a year from outside of UCLA. And I said, yeah. And he said, why not you? And I never would have applied to be a communications major if he didn't say, why not you? So I graduated as a communications major from UCLA. And it's that kind of a thing. Like somebody has to. So with law school, I went and I got my master's in communication from Annenberg School of Communication at night, and I always thought I was going to do that, and then the loans and everything else. And I got married during law school. I wanted to get my doctorate, and my husband at the time he said, "Paycheck." He was done with the like we were getting the debt. So I was going to go to the DA. I was starting out at the DA, and anyway, things just kind of unfolded where his best friend, the number two man in this city, was wrongfully terminated. I said, okay, well, let me help. And then I ended up with something else and something else. And then somebody said to me, oh, you should open your own practice. I said, I won't know what I'm doing. She said, nobody does. And
Yeah,
I just started working. And I don't know. If I had known everything I know, and people started saying to me a couple years later, "Well, weren't you worried about this? Weren't you worried about if I had worried about all those things that people said to me later, I probably wouldn't have, but I just did it. I'd sit at the law library and I'd teach myself and I'd learn and I'd take any case, any trial. All these burned out lawyers that didn't want, be like, "I'll do your trial. I'll do your trial." And I just started doing it. And so that's how it just unfolded, and I've always practiced this one specific area because I love it. I feel like I help people. It's a story about, it's not just paperwork. I mean, there's documents, but I like the human element and I'm always looking out for my client. That way I feel like everything else gets taken care of.
yeah. So uh, if someone were to come to you what would you tell them about just taking a leap sometimes? I mean, not a just a blind leap,
No,
but
I
just going.
understand. If you've got a feeling that there's something that you should be doing, if you know that there's something you're called to do in this life, no, and you're like, oh, everybody does it, nobody can do it in the way you can do it. Um, there's nobody that can do a podcast the way you can do it. If you want to do a podcast, if you want to write a book, nobody can write it the way you can write it. If you want to coach, if you want whatever it is that you are called to do it, because everyone has their own unique handprint. And if there's something, do it. Life's short. We should do what fills us up and brings us magic. And to be caving for some reason or another is just, I mean, it's killing some part of your inside. There's just no way it isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So life is an adventure also.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I always said I would do what I'm doing till I don't like it anymore. I mean, I look at these mediators that are making a ton of money, mediating a case every day, and I think, nah, I'm too one-sided. I always like, I'm a plaintiff's employment lawyer, like I could not be neutral. It's, yeah, I try to be open-minded. I ask the universe to help me be open-minded and have an open heart and an open mind every day so I can really see things and be present. But yeah, I like to do
See,
what keeps me alive.
there's another great thing. You kind of know yourself. You know that spot inside that's you.
Yeah.
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 And fear and imposter syndrome can kind of hide that from us.
Yeah.
And somebody said, I can't remember, it was a famous author, I think, but he said something about not doing the things that you know you'll succeed at, but go ahead and do the thing that you know you won't succeed at. In other words, it's not the idea that you won't succeed, it's the idea that you put that fear aside.
Yeah, walk through the
And
fear. You don't have to do it alone either. And if somebody is a naysayer and doesn't want to like say, "Yeah, that's great," cut them out or don't tell them about it because you want people around you that are supporting you and doing that. And look at people. You're not inventing the wheel. Somebody else has done it. Look at the people that have done it already. How'd they do it?
yeah, well, that's absolutely right. Because if you don't know how to do something, find somebody who does.
Yeah, and
And
walking through fear. Fear. There's so many acronyms for it. False evidence appearing real, or you could be like, F everything and run and not walk through it. Like you could go either direction.
yeah, I haven't heard that
So,
last one.
oh, you
No,
have it. Oh, yeah,
no,
yeah.
but
That one's not as good. So,
that's well, absolutely right. You run from the reality that could be yours.
yeah. So, and it's not real. None of it's real.
Yeah.
Like if you
Well,
really sit and you breathe
that's
into it.
absolutely right. Um, I talked to a hypnotherapist not long ago,
Uh huh.
and actually, uh, yeah, what's reality? I mean, we live a lot of our life in some kind of a particular focus that becomes us. We live most of our life in some kind of a trance. Now, that word trance is foreign to a lot of people, but it's what we focus on.
I heard somebody being interviewed who said, all these people like they're afraid they're gonna fail. You haven't even tried.
That's right. Yeah, that's
Try.
absolutely right.
Make that effort. So it's like
So
the
you've done a lot of things for us today, and could you list just you already have, of course, but could you kind of go over or list some particular tools that you now have to meet each situation, to meet each spiritual situation?
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what a great question. I love that. Okay, so I half the time I think, okay, this podcast is for me. I've learned how to breathe different, and I'm so aware of my breath.
Uh,
So whatever you are called to, I don't care if it's tapping or breath work or yoga and if you change, it all works. What you're
mhm,
called to, it all works. So
yeah.
that's one thing. I'm a big believer in meditation. That for me is just, it
Mhm.
makes me, it doesn't make whatever you're going through okay, but it makes you okay while you're going through it. if the balance, being meditation, even if you start for 3 minutes a day, I think 5 minutes is a better start, but somebody else said three. It's amazing the difference, even if just closing your eyes, deep breaths in and slow out. Do a few of those when you're going through anything, because God is in the pause. So just taking that pause and doing the deep
Yeah.
breaths. Not isolating. This is such a tough time for everyone. And if you don't know how to not isolate, call one person and say, "How are you doing?" That in itself, that person may really need to hear from you. And you making that person feel better will make you feel better. I just promise it will. Okay, dance. By yourself in a room, I have no sense of music. People beg me to lip sync. If I sing out loud, I will feel better. If I dance, I will feel better. Going outside, go for a walk, go the opposite direction around a block that you normally would. Do something different. It also increases your brain activity and your brain cells.
There you go.
But community and service and not isolating are the biggest things of all that I have learned. I wrote a really quick article at the beginning of lockdown, 7 ways to feel better right now. And dancing, putting your feet ground. I know it's winter, but grounding in the dirt. There's something
Yeah.
putting your feet actually in the dirt outside, but breathing oxygen is huge. So breathing outside is a big deal.
Outside air quality is usually, depending on where
Yes.
you live and so on.
Yeah, definitely
Had a horrible
depends.
fire season here, but usually
Yeah,
much better than inside air quality. Yeah.
yeah.
And you can't even go outside barefoot in the snow for a minute or two.
I know. The polar plunge or whatever I watch people, I'm like, no thanks.
Yeah. No, thanks on that one. Well, you live in
Yeah,
California. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So these articles that you're referring to
They're all on my
on
web.
your
Every
website.
every single thing is on my website.
Okay.
The art, everything. It's at
And why don't
52
you
weeks.
tell everyone how they can get to your website? Where else, or what else you want them to know about how they can contact
Yeah, it's all everything is at 52weeksofhope.com and the number 52. 52weeksofhope.com on the website. Uh, every episode is up, all of that. That every like the meaning of life one, or you can go to Apple or Spotify or all those every single I mean it's not everything, but you can just go to the website. I always think that's the easiest, but that's just me.
you? Yeah. And we'll look forward to your book. And what is the book going to be called?
52 weeks of hope, or else the meaning of life. You have to wait and see what editors come up with.
Well, you can always have a
It's so
subtitle too.
ballsy. It's so ballsy. I
Yeah.
just and I don't mean it with any hubris or anything. I just really like when you listen. There's no hubris met by it when you listen to the episode. It doesn't come off that way. I don't. Nobody told me it did.
No, I think love really is the meaning of life,
Oh,
and
absolutely,
that encompasses so much. So,
absolutely.
Lauren, I have to thank you for just a wonderful interview. Very positive. Lots of things that people can use and take away. We didn't even, of course, get into any detail about meditation or any of those things, but if you're listening carefully, and just a wonderful interview. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
Yeah. All right. So I'll stop it there.